morning. So this is the Deferred Compensation Advisory Committee meeting, Thursday, October 26th at 10 a.m. And we will start with roll call, please.
Ms. Goodman?
Present.
Mr. Willardine?
I'm here.
Supervisor Canepa?
Here.
Ms. Herman?
Here.
Ms. Babb?
Here.
Mr. Keokum? Mr. Hopkins?
Here.
Mr. Wolfkamp?
Okay, our first item is to approve the minutes of the quarterly meeting of July 27, 2023. We do. Mm-hmm. No, appreciate the question.
You're welcome, and I share that.
Bless you.
I move that we accept the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have public comment.
There is no public comment.
Give me 1 second. I'm not catching anything out of the YouTube. I'm seeing everything, but I'm getting audio. Could you give me 1 second?
We're having some technical difficulties, so we're going to just hold for a moment till the system catches up with us.
Go ahead, proceed, and see what I can figure out.
Okay, all right, well, we'll go ahead and proceed. So our next is a program status report, third quarter from Nationwide. And I believe Mr. Stegel is unable to be here, so I think Greg is going to go ahead and provide the update.
Correct. Thanks so much. Greg Sabin for Nationwide. Many of you have the Nationwide quarterly report digitally. There are handouts to be had as well if you'd like to follow along. Does anyone need a physical copy? No? Great. Just double checking. So what we saw in Q3 was and Vincent from HIAS will be discussing market conditions, but a small pullback in the market that has continued to this quarter as well. So wanted to go through and just talk about balances, trends, what we can look for upcoming in terms of the Nationwide platform. You'll see on page 2 of the presentation, your overall numbers have come down slightly. That is due to both to a total of $513.5 million, 457 and 401A combined. This has to do with two things. One is we continue to see withdrawals from these plans, basically because of inflation, higher retiree withdrawals. We continue to see transfers out from retirees as well as market pullback. So all of those aspects have created an environment where we've seen a small reduction in the total assets in the plan. However, good news, contributions still remain healthy with over close to $7.5 million in contributions over the last quarter. If we pop to page 4, you'll see a breakdown here of the 457 specifically. Money in, money out, fees, loans, the other activity, repayments, disbursements, write-offs, etc. And that gain loss is detailed out there as nearly $11 million in market losses over that period of time.
I have a quick question.
Please.
The $7.6 million in distributions, do we know what percentage of that roughly would be retiree distributions and people who are just pulling out of the plan because rather than just a regular retirement distribution?
Well, basically what you're asking, let me get a clarification on your question. When there is a distribution, someone is separated from service almost exclusively. I mean, 99%. There's very
Right.
few that are taking distributions while still employed. Just simply because that's, not allowed in the plan except under extraordinary circumstances. So are you talking about, are we breaking out standard withdrawals, taxable withdrawals to the individuals versus rollovers to other institutions?
Correct.
Okay, that will be
So,
further-
so let's
yeah.
just say some employee comes in and works here for 5 years, and they're 30 years old, now they're 35, and they go work for another county in the private sector, they start their own business, whatever they do, and they take their money and they roll it into an IRA.
Yeah.
That would be different than I'm 65 and I retired, and now I'm gonna start taking distributions, right? Both of those, would they not come into that line item as a distribution?
Well, distributions, and that will be detailed further in the report.
Okay,
You'll see a
thank you.
breakout of rollovers versus just standard taxable withdrawals.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sorry.
Options within the market as we see higher volatility, probably some increased interest in that self-directed brokerage account. Also, as the county has allowed additional types of investments within the Charles Schwab self-directed brokerage account, including brokerage CDs, ETFs, exchange-traded funds, and some other items there. Want to skip through a few and really dig into your question as well, which is on the distribution side, but just a quick highlight. On page 8, we break out contributions right now, and you can see both contributions, rollovers in a little less than 400,000. We do have 3,600 and change participants contributing, and we're getting about a quarterly Roth contribution of 500,000. I think, again, Roth is going to continue to grow as we get more and more younger employees, newer employees contributing to the plan. Brenda, who will say a few words here in a minute, really works with employees when it makes sense taxably for them to contribute to a Roth instead of a pre-tax or in addition to pre-tax contributions. So I think we'll see that number continue to grow as the employee base continues to get younger and we get newer and newer employees into the plan. Coming to your question, sir, on page 9, we see distributions, rollovers out, transfers out. Transfers out is a somewhat smaller category. But what I wanted to focus on here is, distributions. And when we talked about how the increase in distributions, just people taking their money out of this plan, has increased. And I think, Vincent, you can back me up on here. Almost all plans across the country, we're seeing that increased withdrawals because of inflationary pressures on retirees and people who are no longer working. So we're seeing that point where distributions are almost equaling, almost equaling the contributions. However, rollovers out, we're also seeing 4.6 million in rollovers out. That's a bit of a bump up from the previous quarter. If you can see on the bottom of page 9, we've topped out the top 5 firms. And what this tells us here, when we see money going to Merrill Lynch, Edward Jones, LPL, and your traditional financial advisory firms, your large brokerage firms, what that says is that, and you can see the size of the assets going out, single accounts in the $400,000, $500,000 range. That says those people are looking for advice. They're looking for financial advice. They're looking for additional financial products that are offered in the plan. What we take from that information is 2 things. One is we need to reinforce with employees, especially later employees in their 50s, employees in their 60s, how affordable, how really inexpensive the county plan is compared to an outside brokerage firm. Many of these people are probably paying 1.5%, as much as 2% to these outside financial advisors. But sometimes it's just simply someone wants different products that are being offered in this plan, whether that's individual stocks, whether that's annuities, whether that's financial management, overall financial management. And some of these people who are transferring out, we see a pretty common cascade of events where someone in their 50s or 60s, parents pass away. Assets are transferred to that individual as an inheritance. Parents already had a financial advisor who was advising on that money, continues to advise now with the younger employee, and starts having that cascade of conversations with that employee. Hey, when you retire, you're supposed to move that money to my accounts, right? So that I can manage this for you. We can all put it in one place. So, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but we definitely need to continue to tell our story and interrupt some of those conversations. I know Brenda has those conversations every day with individuals, but as we work with the county in terms of communications, we can continue to either focus on those individuals or change some of the information we're sending out so that employees realize the range of investment options they have in these programs. We can get more feedback from individuals on what type of investment options they're looking for and bring that back to the county and the committee, as well as really figuring out what are those pain points and whether or not the cost of the plan is going to keep the money in here, or what is that argument that's really going to push down the number of these transfers out. Okay. I know, Vincent, you're going to go more into the fund assets, so we're going to pop through a couple pages down. You'll have some summaries there of assets, of loans. Yes?
On the loans.
Sure.
That sounds like more and more of a good idea because the loans have a smaller interest rate than what we're trying to earn, right? And so they're putting the loans into something else and then paying it back.
Oh, darn it, sorry. Anyway, did you hear all that, or?
Yes, I heard it.
Oh, I could share that.
Loans, even at this day, loans are carrying quite a high interest rate from these plans. However, the individuals do pay the interest back to themselves. So the interest goes back into their own accounts, but it is still a substantial amount of money. It is more money. They're paying back more money than they take out. And when you take out that money, that's actually less money that is in the account to earn anything.
Yeah.
So there's an unknown opportunity cost when you take a loan. If, let's say I take a loan of $50,000 and the market goes up 10% in that period of time, that's nearly $5,000 in gains that I have missed out on. However, if I take out $50,000 and the market goes down 10%, then I have, you could think about it in a certain way, saved myself that money. So there's an unknown opportunity cost to taking a loan out of your retirement account.
Well, what I meant was they were investing in something else and then putting it back in. That's all I was thinking that they were doing, because the loans are moving up, so.
Right, I think, again, loans, very similar to how we're seeing an increase in distributions, we're seeing an increase in loans because of need, because of increase in rents, because of increase in food, because of just simple inflation.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
No problem. We'll see on page 14, enablement and engagement. Just wanted to touch on a few factors, something to look forward to as trends. One is that we have nearly 90% of the accounts in the county have a beneficiary on file. That's extremely good. We'd love 100%, but 90% is an extremely high number. And Brenda and the whole team here in HR really should be proud of themselves for the attention they've given to that, which is, as we all know, a very important element of the plans. We're seeing somewhat of an increase in e-delivery, people signing up online, getting statements online, online distributions, up to 65% of all distributions are now taken online. What we'd like to see is an increase in participant online accounts. So we're only at 50% right now, which tells us that we've got 50%, nearly 50% of all participants, how do I say this, disengaged to their plan. And the more disengaged they are, the more they're not checking it, the more they're not able to see the monies in the plan, make changes to beneficiaries, update information. The more disengaged they are there, the more likely they are probably to roll out at retirement or to take distributions. So we're going to continue to use our participant engagement program and marketing to really grow the number of people who have set up those username and passwords and have access to the either website or app for the accounts.
Again, I know that a lot of people are just, there's so much information to put out online. And so that password seems so minuscule versus everything else that I've provided. So there's especially retirees, we're in our 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's like, hey, I've heard how people get hacked. I heard how they lose their house. So just, if there was a more concrete way to say, yeah, we're not gonna lose anything, or we're not gonna provide it to 8 million other people, that's where they're going, so.
Sure, there's always the discussion around cybersecurity, and that's something we take very seriously, and we can talk about cascading that again through our marketing program. But the message I think we really want to get out is there's no better way to secure your account than setting up a username and password. When you don't have a username and password, you are more susceptible to someone coming in and perhaps fraudulently, whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody else coming in and being able to access your account simply by pretending to be you in an identity theft situation. Whereas if you have a username and password set up, you have one more step of verification there within your accounts.
Greg, I have a question.
Sure.
Are we able to break down that participant online account number to know how many are active employees versus retirees? So we know
I
if
could
we
get
should
that
target
number.
one
Yeah, I can get that
population
number
or
for
the
you.
other.
Sure. Make a note of that.
While he's making a note, I just want to share that we have something called account lock. So our participants can call our home office and set up their own question and password. And it's an additional layer of security that we offer for people who are concerned about outside access to their money. So they have to know the secret password in order to get any type of a distribution or even access to the account. So account lock is an additional layer that we offer. Thanks.
Thanks, Brenda. All right, there's a few more pages here from page 15 on down detailing the 401A. As it's a much smaller account, we'll just touch on a few of the big numbers here on page 16. We'll see roughly the same type of progress here, just in terms of the account slightly decreasing in total overall balance. Towards the end of our presentation, if you have any questions about the terms within the presentation on page 24, the glossary of terms goes through. But that's what I wanted to just highlight and focus on in an otherwise larger report today for the committee. Are there any other questions, please, regarding the information from Nationwide?
I don't have a question regarding the information you give us, but I do have a question that the Retirees Association, RPE, SJC, does a newsletter quarterly. And something in that newsletter quarterly is a really big article from Valley Strong about why you should move your money to Valley Strong. Nationwide, I can see a benefit to having your information somehow, maybe not competitively, but if you want the retirees to know that they don't have to roll their money out to get good service, it's a ready-made opportunity if you're not already contributing to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into that.
Off
And
the top of my head,
as
who to contact, but,
yeah, as members of the Retiree Association, are you both?
uh-huh.
Your advocacy for that would definitely help, for sure.
And I believe that Tammy Matuska actually did insert an article in a previous newsletter, but we can revisit that and see if we can do it on a regular basis.
I'm just telling you that the article from Valley Strong is very strongly encourages
Yes.
bringing your money over, so.
Quite sure, yeah. And later on in the agenda, we'll talk more about the outreach and education that we've been doing with the county, both virtually and in person with Brenda. But for right now, that is my time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we will have the third quarter performance report from Hyas and Mr. Galindo.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Vincent Galindo. The company I work for is called Hyas Group. I do see at least a couple new faces, so I'll just be very brief in the background. Similar to Nationwide, we are a vendor to the plans, but one of the characteristics of our relationship with the county, and more importantly, the plans and participants, is we adopt fiduciary status, meaning that despite the fact that the county is technically our client, every recommendation that we make through these meetings or offline have to benefit those groups of participants in the plan. And so that's who we advocate for. The other part of it too is we're completely independent. So when I talk about some of the funds, as well as the record keepers like Nationwide, we don't receive anything soft or hard dollars. We're truly independent. Our office, or at least my desk, is in Portland, Oregon, but I grew up in Woodland, and so most of my clients are cities and counties in the Sacramento and San Francisco Bay Area. So I consider this home. Go ahead and flip into the report. Hopefully everyone has the report. I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about the economy and the markets. We have definitely seen a split between the two. I think the conventional wisdom is the economy and the markets follow in lockstep. And I don't know if you remember my dog walking analogy. That's not always the case, and certainly now we're seeing a very, very healthy economy and some weakness in the markets. If you take a look on page 5, there are 4 charts. I do want to highlight the strengths of the economy. The chart on the upper left is the gross domestic product, or GDP. Certainly the chorus around a recession, that volume has been muted significantly. If there is a slight chance of a recession, most economists think it's going to be very, very short-lived or very shallow, or both, but the numbers are pretty compelling. So gross domestic product is essentially the broad measure of our economic output. That solid line is the dollar value of all the goods and services produced in a country in any given year. That lightly dotted line is the year-over-year change. And the year-over-year change, most economists would view like a 2 to 3% growth rate as the Goldilocks economy, not too hot, not too cold, and that's exactly what we've seen over the last year. So I'll just punch out some of the numbers. The third quarter of last year, GDP came at 3.2, fourth quarter came at 2.6, first quarter 2.0, second quarter 2.1. I don't know if you saw the news, the advanced number came out for the third quarter of 4.9. So again, very, very healthy economy, at least as measured by GDP. To echo that point, if you take a look at the jobs number, or at least the unemployment rate, moving to the chart on the upper right, some say a measure of full employment is an unemployment rate of 5%. Nationally, it's 3.8%. Here in the county, it's a little bit higher at 6.2, but very, very solid jobs number. Wages are keeping up with inflation. And speaking of inflation, the chart on the bottom right is the Consumer Price Index. This is one of the major reasons why the Federal Reserve is continuing to raise rates over the last 18 months. It's because they're trying to tamp down this headwind to our recovery called inflation, or the Consumer Price Index. They do have an explicit target of inflationary number of 2%. Right now it's 3.7%. And so they've been very aggressive at raising interest rates on the short term. That's why we see money market funds at 5.5% now. But the bond math is, as rates go up, the value of existing bonds go down. And so that's why we're seeing some weakness in the bond market. But also, and this was a good footnote to the discussion that we just had, the American consumer drives about 2/3 of the economy, and we are seeing some fatigue or weakness in our spending habits, or at least where we're getting our money from. So early on the pandemic, a lot of us were cash rich given the stimulus, and we were spending money, a lot of money on goods and services with money in our checking or bank accounts. Now we're spending money tapping our retirement plan assets, like we talked about. We have seen an incremental increase in hardship, distributions, as well as loans. The other part of it too is credit cards. We have reached a record number of over $1 trillion as American consumers on our credit cards. So we're continuing to spend, but then we might be tapped out given those reasons. Geopolitically though, too, is some dark clouds certainly forming globally, and so some potentially rough times ahead. But generally speaking, the economy is in good shape. speaking of the bond market, flip ahead to the next page. As I said, bond math states with the higher interest rates, we have seen a weakness in the bond market. Take a look at page 6, upper left, second line down. The Bloomberg US aggregate is a good representation of our bond market. Remember last year, the ag or US aggregate was negative 13%. Take a look at for the quarter, negative 3.25%. So significant weakness short term as well as last year in the bond market. The stock market, similar. The next page, page 7, upper right, the S&P or Standard & Poor's 500. These are 500 large U.S. companies, household names like UPS, FedEx, JP Morgan. You can see for the quarter, also negative 3.25%. But that year-to-date number is pretty solid, over 13%. Remember, last year, the S&P 500 was negative 18%. So some nice rebound despite this third quarter negative return. And then it's a similar story internationally. There are about 45 countries outside the US with an investable stock market. So if you take a look at page 8, this is the international market data page for the third quarter. The first line on the upper left, the ACWI or the All Country World Index, the ACWI US, you can see for the quarter, negative 3.75%, year to date, about 5.3%. So still relatively healthy for the year-to-date number despite that third quarter weakness. So questions, comments on that? Okay, flip ahead to the next section. These are the two plans combined, and I'm talking about the pie chart. You can see on the upper right, just under $520 million. About a third of the portfolio is in fixed income. Another third is in large companies. And then you can see the asset allocation, about 20%. So nice, healthy allocation. And then moving to the center left, just some plan notes. You can see at the fund level, that money market fund that we were talking about at the last meeting was added, will be added November 10th. So nice relief there for those participants who are looking to eke out a little bit more higher yield with also capital preservation or safety in mind. The IPS or investment policy statement was dated May 23rd. We'll go ahead and continue that review next year since it's an annual practice. And then from a vendor management, no significant notes at this time. The one thing under fund notes at the bottom, these are some of the funds that for various reasons are giving us a little bit of discomfort, suffering some short-term weakness, whether it be by performance or manager change. And so the MetWest total return, we were just informed that the two lead portfolio managers of that particular fund are departing the firm. If you remember just over a year ago, Tad Ravel, the chief investment officer, decided to leave the firm. We placed that fund on watch. But because he wasn't directly tied to the management of the fund, we thought things would be okay. It was placed on watch given Tad's departure. Everything was fine. We took it off watch until this recent announcement. So given the management departure, we are unfortunately prepared to terminate that fund. We will come at the next meeting with a recommendation with suitable candidates so that you can take a look. But just given the disruption, that team is no longer going to be in place into 2024. TIA-CREF high yield. This is a bond portfolio that invests in junk bonds or weaker, less than investment grade, but ironically, they focus on higher quality junk. Yeah, exactly. So given those reasons, basically the Bs, and there's been some short-term weakness with the TIA-CREF. No real long-term issues with that particular fund, but it is suffering a bout of weakness in the performance sector. The T. Rowe Price, this fund was placed on watch earlier this year. The good news, given the concentration of tech-heavy names, has actually performed very, very well. And so you'll notice in the comments, performance is in compliance as of this past quarter. And so our recommendation is to retain that on watch and maybe at the next meeting, remove it because there's language in the investment policy statement that says a fund should be in compliance for 2 consecutive quarters before we remove it. So good news there, but just we'll wait a little bit longer for that T. Rowe Price fund. And then MFS, Mid Cap Growth. This is another fund that is experiencing some management change. With MFS, this fund had 3 portfolio managers. Paul Gordon was not the most senior or the most junior, but he decided to take a leave of absence and then he decided to retire. In our communications with the remaining team, very, very solid approach to the portfolio. And so despite Paul's retirement, we plan on removing this particular fund from watch status at the next meeting. And so very, very comfortable with the remaining team after his departure. And then Invesco Real Estate. This is a fund that invests in real estate investment trusts. They have a more sour look on the economy, and so they were underweight office space. Office space has actually rebounded significantly, and so that underweight has caused them to underperform over the short term and drag down their longer term numbers. No real long-term concerns with that strategy, or at least the outlook, but nonetheless, that's the reason why they're a watch candidate. And so our recommendation is to place the MetWest, the TIAA-CREF, and the Invesco Real Estate on watch, and then we'll certainly report at the next quarter if we can remove any of the other funds from watch status. A lot to unpack there, so I'll pause, take a breath, see if anybody has questions. Okay. If you flip into the next section, this is the 457 plan. The top half of that particular page is the asset class breakdown at the beginning of the quarter as well as the end, and then the difference between. You'll see the beginning value of the fixed income, large company, mid-sized company, small company, those international funds that I talked about that invest in the countries outside the US, asset allocation, and then specialty, and that's that precious metal and real estate fund, both managed by Invesco. The bottom half, you can see the performance. Longer term, the year-to-date, the 1 year, 3 and 5 year, the performance of the fund is in that navy blue, which are all positive, except for this recent quarter. You can see on a weighted basis, the funds have performed -2%, or more specifically, -1.9% for the third period of 23. Flipping ahead to 14, and this goes back to, I think, everything that we were talking about in terms of participant behavior. Towards the middle of page 14, you'll see that cash flow summary. We have seen significant net negative flows, and that is that third line down under the cash flow summary. So similar to Nationwide, we take all the money coming into the program and all the money leaving for various reasons. For the fourth quarter, it was net negative $5 million. So $5 million more left than went in. Similar first quarter, $4.2 million. It slowed down significantly, the June 23 second quarter, just under $500,000, but it did tick up a little bit for the more recent period, but certainly a lot less than that $4.5–5 million that we've seen in prior quarters. But I think you're right. There's some strategies to be held in terms of educating participants, maybe marketing differently. Certainly some work to be done. But the trend is much more favorable. Taking a look at page 16, this is the planned growth over time. You can see the middle left, 2019, there was a decrease in 2022 with the market correction, but has since improved to just under $490 million. The next section on page 18, this is the 401A plan. You can see the asset class breakdown on the top half, and then the fund performance on a weighted basis as represented by those blue columns. And you can see for the quarter, this plan lost a little bit more given the different asset allocation, just under net negative 3%. And then from a cash flow standpoint, different demographic, different plan structure. And so you'll see on page 21, the cash flow, certainly in the fourth period of last year, net negative 110,000, dropped even more in the first quarter, net negative 170,000, but you'll see the next 2 quarters positive, 87,000 and then 374,000 for the most recent period. And then the planned growth on page 23, different asset size, so not as great as the 457, but you can see very, very similar trend there. And then the manager scorecard or the investment policy statement compliance, on page 25, what we do is we list out all the investment options, the actively managed funds on 25, the passively managed funds on the next page. But we're hoping that when we screen them against the qualitative factors and quantitative factors, all the characteristics comport with the metrics in your investment policy statement. Those would show blue. As I said, there are a couple funds that are showing red, and then some of the funds are in compliance and no longer violating metrics. Skipping past pages 27, 28, 29, and beyond, not because these performance numbers are unimportant, it's because a lot of these flow into the blue and red dot. And so unless anybody has any pause, not to be presumptuous. Okay, moving to the next section, and we talked about this briefly, but it is a very, very important point. In fact, there was a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that said fees matter in the monitoring of retirement plans. And so every quarter we report those to you. And so if you take a look at page 32, we track 3 different fees. One is the investment fee. That's the fees that participants pay directly to the fund managers. That's that big light blue portion. But there's also the record keeper fee of 2.25 basis points. So to compare that with Greg's example of an outside broker charging 1, maybe 2%, the fees here are very, very low. You can see just under 0.5% or 40 basis points. And then, of course, there's the administrative tack-on fee that pays for plan-related expenses like legal, consulting, training, et cetera. And that's at 3.5 basis points, the navy blue portion, right above the orange portion, which is Nationwide's record-keeping fee. The nice thing is on the next page, page 33, this is a longer-term view of the fees that participants are paying. I like to see the trend where it's going down over time. And kudos to the committee staff to make sure that the fees that participants are paying are not only reasonable, but are decreasing over time. And then on page 34, those are the expense ratios that I talked about. Every fund, except for the fixed account, has a stated expense ratio, and you can see them articulated there. The next section is the 401A plan, and I'll just highlight on page 37, similar trend. Since 2018, fees have dropped. And so with that, I'll pause. See if anybody has questions on the fee section or my report. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to present today.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is the update on money market fund addition. I don't know if you kind of.
Yeah, so just a way of background, and again, this was the reality of participants, especially retirees, as Greg said. The terminated participants, which retirees are included, have the ability to move their money out, something that the existing employees don't have. And so being cognizant of the reality of this higher interest rate environment where you can get a CD and or money market fund at 4, 4.5, now 5.5%, participants were at least confronted with the choice that they could leave and make some money by doing so. The committee reviewed a search document and then decided to add a money market fund. And again, that's going to take place on November 10th. So participants on the core menu in the plans will have access to a money market fund. But reading between the lines, or at least the futures market, it does seem like the Fed is done raising interest rates. And so that 5.5% may be peaked out, but you never know in terms of what good news with the economy is going to do to foster more interest rate hikes in the future. So we'll see.
All right, next on the agenda is actually the discussion of the watch status. Again, Vincent.
So we talked about the 3 funds that were currently violating the metrics but are not on watch. And so typically it would require a formal motion and a vote to place those funds on watch. And so I'm asking to place the Invesco Real Estate, the TIA CREF High Yield Fund, as well as the Metropolitan West or MetWest Total Return Bond Fund on watch status. Merely a procedural issue. Typically we ask, or we get asked if we should alert the participants. At that point, no. This is just more for the committee, given the internal issues or the violations of those metrics.
So move to put those three on watch.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, now for legal and regulatory updates.
The one issue that's percolating is around Secure Act 2.0. The provision 603, or also known as the highly comped age 50 and over, making catch-up contributions, would have to contribute those to a Roth account. That was giving the industry as well as a lot of plan sponsors discomfort. And so good news is that was pushed out for 2 years into 2026. And so despite the headlines that it made when the act was passed, we do get some relief in terms of timing to implement the definition of highly compensated in terms of what drives the amount, as well as the Roth feature to make these age 50 catch-up contributions after tax. I don't know if you two have anything to share with that.
No, just to follow up, given that IRS delay till 2026, whether it's going to be processes and procedures within HR and payroll departments, whether it's going to be Nationwide's platform to be updated, given those 2 years, it gives us an opportunity to partner better with our clients and come up with strategies as to who is going to be informing employees, who is going to be tracking certain, whether it's pre-tax or Roth and income. And I think we're still looking forward for some more guidance for the IRS as to who is responsible ultimately for some of these roles, and some clarification around the definition of income, as many people in the payroll world or in the accounting world know that there's about 25 and a half different definitions of income depending on what you're talking about. So more to come on that for sure.
All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda, virtual benefits fair event update from Nationwide.
Thank you. I'm going to give a quick update and then turn it over to Brenda DeVecchio to talk about other field activities as well. But the Virtual Benefits Fair was a great success last year, a wonderful turnout of employees who, in lieu of a physical benefits fair, went to the virtual benefits fair, participated in, gained information, set up appointments, made changes to their accounts. As our next agenda item, we will go through a few of those items to talk about the NAGDA award associated with it. But right now we're, let's say about 3 weeks into the current virtual benefits fair. We've had 230 unique visitors who have participated in over 1,600 different events, meaning that they have clicked through and either gone through education modules, changed their accounts already, whether it's contribution or investments, or set up appointments with Brenda. So Brenda, I'll let you discuss some other outreach and education.
Sure, thank you. Brenda DeVecchio, I am your local Nationwide retirement specialist, and I worked with HR to promote the National Retirement Security Month, and we set up some classes. So I offered 4 different classes once a week. We didn't really see the interest that we did last year, wasn't really quite as high. I probably averaged anywhere between 5 and 10 people for each session. So we had actually a total of 30 people. But from that, I decided to do what we did last year and pull a name from each of the sessions. And I'm going to be giving those people kind of a little thank you for coming gift. So those have been ordered, and I'll work on getting those out to everybody. So not as high of interest as we had in the past, but I think the feedback that I got from the classes was very positive. So I'm really glad that we made that effort. Of course, in addition to that, we do, Nationwide's been doing quarterly team presentations where me and our group of Northern California folks do a variety of classes, and those are very highly attended here. So We did those at the end of August through September. And I would say on average, we had anywhere from 25 to 45 people in attendance for each of those presentations. So we had well over 130 people here at the county take advantage of that education, which is really, really encouraging. And our team really likes that opportunity to do that virtual outreach to people who we may not have the chance to see one-on-one. We offer those on the lunch break. So hopefully that gives people the opportunity to join us during the day. As far as in person, I am going to be back here for a couple of dates before the end of the year, and I've connected with behavioral health. I did reach out to the hospital and not gotten a response yet, but I have a friend who works there who says they're back into masking mandates for the employees, so that could be part of the deal. But I'll continue as we move into next year to reach out to the different departments and offer some in-person opportunities to sit down with me. And I really appreciate the feedback from you, Christine, about what our retirees are looking for and the ideas of how to do the outreach. So we'll get our heads together and see what we can offer. Yeah, any questions for me? All right, thank you all so much.
All right, and Greg, I'll let you continue. The next item is the NAGDA Award recap.
Sure, we had a very informative and exciting trip up to Seattle earlier this month. And from the 8th to the 11th, the National Association of Governmental Deferred Compensation Administrators, also known as NAGDA, was held. And as part of that, the County of San Joaquin won an award. If you, I don't believe the link was in the materials passed out today, but if you just go to Google and search NAGDA Award San Joaquin, you will come up with that award. And it did correspond with last year's rousing success of the virtual benefits courtyard. So the NAGDA presenters went through some brief items around in front of the viewers there, went in and explained the benefits and the award. We got to take a picture, which is great with the award. But really, these are the benefit of these awards, in my mind, is that the case study goes into NAGDA's publicly available information and many other cases around the country, other counties, cities, special districts can utilize these award winners for best practices to make their plans better. So while I would encourage you all to check out NAGDA's website and see the plaudits for San Joaquin County, take a peek at some of the other plans, whether they are other counties or other cities, to see what other awards were won in different areas that we could bring for best practices here to the county.
So I did bring for show and tell the actual award, which you'll all be glad to know created great interest in the security line. They thought for some reason I had a cutting board and I must have had a knife, but that was the award. So, and thank you to both Highest and Nationwide. I know you both participated in nominating us, and it was a great experience and enjoyed NAGDA overall. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Brandy Hopkins and I went. We got to have our picture taken with the award. It's a great experience and great training. Really, really good experience. And Erin, I think you participated remotely, correct?
Yes, I attended virtually this year as well, first time.
Great.
And just to put a plug in for next year, the next NAGDA conference in 2024 will take place in September in Phoenix, and then 25 will be in San Diego. So depending on your geographical interest or timing, mark your calendars.
All right. All right, next on our agenda, we're going to ask Shandell Graves from our HR office to provide an update on our election process for the advisory committee.
Okay, so currently we are in the middle of elections. All ballots have been mailed out to all participants. We are on track with our timeline to receive the ballots back, count them, and present the final election results. So that's where we're at.
All right, thank you. All right, now any comments from our committee members? right, we have a quiet group today.
Oh, wait,
I can say congratulations on your award, and I know it's a lot of work just to apply for them, so.
Thank you.
and I do have a comment, I forgot. When I was trying to get on the ballot, one of the things the letter said was that information could be available online, and it was not online. And then when I went online to try to make a copy of it, I also saw that the minutes were like 2 quarters past or something like that. And I forgot who I emailed about this, but they did say that they were going to update the minutes. And granted, this is probably not your biggest priority in HR, but to say on a letter that the stuff is available online and it's not, and the thing is, I looked at 2019's letter, it said the same thing, that this information in these forms are available online. They're not, they never were. So it's not like this administration did it back in 2019, it wasn't there either. So either change the letter and say that it's not available online, or, and I was just wondering, why do you need 10 participants to petition you to get on the ballot? Why can't you just be on the ballot?
Well, that's a good question that I do not know the answer to off the top of my head. It may be that it's part of the provisions in the
Well,
plan.
and one of the reasons why I brought it up is because I went to a minimum of 20 people that I thought were on deferred comp. And one of them started writing their name and they went, oh, I forgot, I took mine off. So I had to white out that person and get somebody else to name. And in a way, it was very helpful because I got so many answers as to why they dropped out. But it's just sad that it's like, but it's so good. And they said, no, we can't control our own investment. And it's like, yes, you can, you know. And they didn't know about loans. They didn't know about the Roth IRA. There was just so much they didn't know about. Oh, and one of them said, well, my spouse and I needed to put it together and we can't put it over at Nationwide. And I'm sure you could. Move the spouses onto Nationwide? Oh, okay, that's why, okay, they were definitely not county employees, the other. So that's why they moved it, so they could be together, so, okay. Yeah, anyway, and there was another one that said, well, it wasn't that much, so I fixed my roof. So, yeah, so anyway, just, and the other thing is, I don't believe I'm supposed to be able to go to an office and get somebody's signature. Isn't that like politicking or something?
I can't imagine there would be an issue with that.
Oh, good, okay, just as long as I'm not violating any rule. Okay, I'm done.
I think there are some work rule provisions about engaging in political activity on county time, but I don't think that would preclude you from, it's a plan, your participation in the advisory committee is a benefit to the employee, so I don't see that as a direct issue. Okay. So I will thank you very much, Ms. Babb, for letting us know about, staff have indicated that the minutes and agendas have been updated on the website. We'll make sure that we're keeping up with that. And I do appreciate the information about the election process, so we'll make sure that our staff is double checking those before those letters go out for the next election. And then one comment I wanted to make, several of the sessions that I went to at the NAGDA conference did talk a lot about different communication strategies. So I think there are some opportunities. We talked about the rollover things, but I think there's others for active employees. So hopefully over the next maybe year, we can, as a group, talk a little bit about some of the communication changes we can be making as a plan to ensure that our active employees, we're encouraging, more of our active employees to participate and they understand the benefits and the benefits of engaging with Nationwide so that they're better educated when they do go to leave. And hopefully they'll be engaged with that and then stay with the plan and not do those rollovers. But it also, some of the comments you've made makes me think there's probably some communication we can be doing, as you said it earlier, that group that's 50 to 60 maybe getting ready to retire, but also to our retirees, if there's some more communication we can be doing there. So I think that there's some opportunities that we can take advantage of and hopefully see some improvements. So thank you. All right. Any other comments from the committee? All right, then we will adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is Thursday, January 25th at 10 o'clock here in the same room. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.